Get 5 coffins ready.
What's up everybody, Shimoki here, and today we're going to be talking about 3 gods to one-trick as a jungler in SMITE. If you don't know what one-tricking is, it's when you play almost exclusively one character to the point that you know every little thing there is to know about them, from matchup knowledge to niche mechanics of the character, as well as of course exceptional execution of the character. So since it's pretty much the only god you'll be playing, they need to be characters who are not only good in the meta consistently, but also heavily benefit from learning the ins and outs of them to ridiculous degrees. This video isn't for beginners and will require you to have a basic understanding of each role, but I'll of course be describing each god as best I can. And if you want a breakdown of each character, I'll leave resources for myself and others down in the description. So without further ado, let's get into it with one of SMITE's most prolific assassins of all time, SET. Now to be clear, I am fully aware that SET is only as prolific as he has been because he's flexible in other roles. But because of this fact, I think people have sort of shoved off the fact that SET is just generally a really good jungler too, and he has been since release. On a more basic level, SET is a relentless basic attacker with self-sustain who has very low cooldowns on everything, and everything he does lets him close the gap on all those targets. Now already that leaves him at an advantage in terms of reliability, since basic attack based characters are almost never out of the equation thanks to their wealth of items that can boost their stats. You've got attack speed, obviously, but anti-heal, percent health damage, percent shred, flat shred, sustain, even tank stats, literally everything you could ever ask for. And SET slips all of these on like a glove, not only because he's got those low cooldowns and slows, and not to mention a teleport, but also his high base damage means that even if you're lacking in raw power or penetration, he can still stick to you like glue and just never stops attacking. But okay, that makes SET good consistently, but even past that, you gain a lot by playing this character on the regular and learning the ins and outs of him. Teleport ranges, angling your skewer shots, but most of all understanding when you can and cannot full commit are all things that you desperately need to know as SET. Learning the teleport range is pretty important, and getting that muscle memory down, like most characters, is absolutely vital. But there's a certain finesse to always getting your max range teleport and not dropping your spawns short. Then afterwards, the immediate follow-up skewer shot is easy, but now for maximum damage you want to place another spawn too, and placing it in such a way that the skewer and the 2 spawns hit every time is no small feat. But the most important part of SET is that good old matchup and damage knowledge. A good understanding of what can and cannot peel SET off of others, as well as understanding how much damage SET can deal in a given amount of time at any particular moment, is what's going to elevate a SET player. This is the case with every god of course, but SET above almost all others thanks to this sort of unpredictability that comes with being a basic attack based character with this huge burst in the form of a skewer combo smack dab right in the middle of all his combos. But really nail an understanding of what SET can do in every situation, and there's really no stopping you. A lot like how it feels to get fed on my next god, Susano. Now this slot could be taken up by 1.5 billion assassins. A lot of them have hard to miss, giga strong abilities with a good smattering of CC on top. But I've selected Susano for 2 reasons. Honestly, 1, he's my favorite god, but 2, I think he's the best character for stomping matches in the early game. Not necessarily when it comes to the late game, and not even really in the early game either, but this character just seems to have the secret sauce for completely shitting on lower level players or even just players who are off their game that particular match. Now with most characters, they have something definitive that makes them extremely good at stomping. Arachne has her unavoidable trailing slow, Pele is, well, annoying, stuff like that. But Susano has an unavoidable and hard to counter pull, his 3 which is avoidable but almost never is and tracks you, leading to endless mind games and just everything about his ultimate. So his toolset is pretty idiot proof from the Susano player's perspective, and annoying to deal with when you're on the receiving end of it as well. Okay, so really annoying and good at stomping. What about when you get against actual good players? Well, Susano definitely has holes in his game plan once you get against someone who knows what they're doing. He's got a lot of moving parts, his combos are long, and most of all he needs to dump absolutely everything into you to secure the kill if he's not ahead. But speaking of dumping everything into you, whoo boy, we need to talk about that damage. When you do catch someone with your pull, your 3, or your ultimate, they are gone. Barring tank, Susano will annihilate anyone if he's allowed to get his full combo out.
Except he also will.
Now those of you out of the loop of Susano may be saying, hey, that's a high risk, high reward character. But no, Susano may not be stellar in the early game, but he's got insanely good farm potential. His ganks are absolutely stellar, and more than anything, he's just disgusting in late game teamfights thanks to that ultimate. It takes a decent head on your shoulders to, stop blink pulling people once the game gets later. But Susano can stick way back and still have the flex potential to control fights with his ultimate, follow up on a teammate's control, and one-shot someone, and of course, steal objectives too. All that, and he's just really fun to play. He's got some hard counters for sure, especially when it comes to Guardians, but that flexibility thanks to his 3 and ultimate, plus the frequency with which he can perform those mind games, makes Susano an excellent god to one-trick. Next up is a god who most certainly doesn't require a high IQ, but does necessitate a strong understanding of the jungle role as a concept, and rewards exceptional microplay in the jungle by having extremely clean and simple mechanics of his own. This god is of course Mercury. Now Mercury is known as a late game hypercarry, and for good reason. The guy buys crit, and that's about it. Bars. He's there to hit fast, hit hard, and smack a bit of CC on you while he does it. Now that makes Merc great every time you hit the late game, but of course the late game isn't going to happen every match. You could get steamrolled or just plain F6 before Mercury gets online. Or do you? You see, Mercury doesn't do a lot of damage early, that's clear, but his damage is still definitely there. And even if you don't think Mercury's damage is comparable to, say, the mid-tier early game junglers, Merc's dash is still one of the most insane CC abilities in the early game. Of course, late game it's kind of trash unless you catch someone alone, since you just kind of stand still, but in those early game 1v1 jungler skirmishes or in the 2v2 in the mid lane, his dash is an absolutely stellar tool. And once Merc hits 3 and has his attack speed stem, I'm gonna be honest, other than the heavy hitters in the early game like Thor, Thana, Pele, Merc can really keep up with most junglers if he stays in basic attack range, and I'll die on that hill. That leads me right to ganks, and yeah, sure, his pre-level 5 ganks are pretty weak, and right now the meta is go red, speed, then immediately look for a gank. But if you just power farm to level 5, or hey, just power farm in general, once you get your first item, not even your first crit item, you will come out swinging. As hard as some of those mid-game monsters, of course not. But Mercury's ult alongside the dash CC is more than enough to let your teammates fill the blanks for you. Okay, so that still doesn't make him sound stellar. Even Set, our other basic attack boy on this list, is better in the early and the mid game and can handle ganks all on his own. But that late game, good god. Mercury does the most damage out of any assassin when he's in basic attack range, and it's not even close. Susano and Merc are pretty similar in this respect, where they let their ults rip and then walk into basic attack range to perform their combos. So, hey, let's compare. Okay, here's Susano. Lovely. And now here's Mercury. And yeah, I don't think any more needs to be said.